Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Discovery Group's inaugural webinar. I have the pleasure of doing our first one today, Recruiting for Kicks. I'll give people a moment to fill in or join the room for that matter, but I'll slowly get started. My name is Christoph Clodius, and I'm Vice President here at the Discovery Group. You're going to get used to hearing my voice for the next little while. So again, really appreciate everybody signing up with an opportunity to learn from each other and hopefully bring some best practices to recruiting. So recruiting great talent is an ongoing concern today, tomorrow, and likely always will be. Like it or not, everyone leaves their job at some point. So that means roles will always be open, organizations always grow, and new and evolving roles emerge. And I'm a soccer fan, and it's great to be mid-World Cup time, or preliminarily World Cup time anyway. And I'm also a full-time professional search consultant. I've had the pleasure of working with the Discovery Group for over 6 years, with over 15 years of search experience in total, complemented by at least that long in fundraising roles as well. And at the Discovery Group, we're committed partners in the social profit sector. We believe social profit organizations can and do change the world through governance and planning, campaigns and fundraising council, coaching and search. We meet clients where they are in times of need and transition. I also want to respectfully acknowledge that the work of the Discovery Group takes place on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Stolo, and Musqueam First Peoples. So I've seen lots of teams in states of flux. I've been a referee, I've been a coach, I've been a player, I've been injured, I've been captain, and I've lost lots of games, rest assured. But it's not about me. I'm sure many of you have played these roles too. But I first want to check in before I get into really deeply into the soccer humor and soccer references. Are people really into the World Cup or is it just a me thing? So let's start off with a quick poll for that matter. How are people feeling about the World Cup this year and what's going on? Are you excited? Are you moderately excited? Are you not into it at all? I'm just sort of curious how people have landed in that respect. And there's no judgments whatsoever, no right answers, no wrong answers. Unlike my social media feed during the World Cup, this is a judgment-free space fundamentally. So it looks like we've got, about half the crowd's excited and solidly a third of you or a quarter of you are somewhat indifferent. So fair enough. And I'm with you there for that matter. And I should say, my colleague Kirsten McInnes is running the polls in the background and doing the technical support. So really appreciate Kirsten's help. And she's also going to be moderating some questions between sessions as well, or between topics for that matter. So half of you officially are excited. That's great to hear. And everybody else is kind of indifferent to it. So a nice even split and could mean my jokes fall flat, but at least we'll give it a shot anyway. So recruiting for kicks. I like recruiting. It's a fun challenge, but I know it's not for everyone. But recruiting for kicks is our title today, which you can take any number of ways for that matter. Kicks can be painful, kicks can be joyous, kicks can be repetitive. But I want to kick the ball to you with practical, actionable steps and tips based on what I've learned doing this, and for most of you, or some of you for that matter too. So I apologize now if I stretch the soccer analogies too far. So I know some of you are executive directors, you're lead fundraisers. Some of you are in HR. Many of you I don't know at all for that matter. And some of you may actually be on the job hunt for that matter, looking for some tips and best practices. So if not every point that I talk about today applies, that's perfectly fine. I'm just trying to speak to a lot of you here in our proverbial stadium. And if you want to have a follow-up chat afterwards, please feel free to get in touch. And as mentioned, there is some opportunity for questions. So there's 48 teams in the World Cup. What does that mean? 48 tools for all 48 teams, 6 categories, 8 tips each. And I promise not to go into extra time if I can possibly help it. So phase 1, we're in the round of 32. It's early stages. We're preparing to hire. We know we need someone. We've got permission to hire, or a role is vacant. So the principle here is to really be clear about what it is that you want. It's a little bit of reverse engineering in some ways, building your candidate profile backwards. What does success look like? What does a successful candidate look like? Who are this person's collaborators? Why do we need to hire this person? So look at it this way. If our end goal is winning the World Cup, how do we build the best team to get there? So let's first start off with defining what success looks like after this person has been onboarded and is fully functioning for that matter. So anyone can list desired traits, but think about the ends first. Why do these traits matter? Let's say you're keeping in mind someone with 5 to 10 years major gifts experience. That's what you're looking for. But really, why? What is it that you want this person to achieve? You want them to raise major gifts, which is obvious, right? But does that mean any amount of major gifts? Is it $1 million or $2 million? Or are you just building your shop? Or are you a large, sophisticated shop with a $10 million goal? for this person fundamentally? Do you have a growth trajectory? Have you raised major gifts before? This matters because someone coming from a much smaller shop, but knowing best practices, can likely step into those lower level goals or lower level targets because they can bring some principles and best practices. But if you want someone operating at that 10 to $15 million level in a large shop, it's a very different kind of proposal in person. Yet on paper, both of those people could functionally have 5 to 10 years major gifts experience. You also want to align your decision makers before you launch your search. So I'll warn you now, just contextually, that a lot of what I'm going to talk about is doing the work early to set the stage for success later on and throughout your hiring process. Case in point, before you even post, I want you to think about who is hiring and who they count on for advice. It's one thing to have an executive director hire their vice president of fundraising lead, whatever that person might look like. But that executive director likely has a trusting relationship with a COO or a CFO or a program lead, for instance. So, in other words, not everyone is going to be the coach, but everyone might have opinions on your lineup and how you should approach the game. So, you need to make sure you're aligned before you actually step on the field. I've seen lots of these COOs, and I'm sure you have too, and program leads get blindsided by an interview panel request late in the process. And this goes beyond a job description review. It goes into an iterative conversational process to understand what it is that they might be looking for and the evaluation criteria. Because you want to find out early on if people are aligned. Because if you find out at the end when people aren't aligned in what this person needs to be, the competencies, their background, if you're looking for different things, you've spent a lot of time, less productive time when you could have been factoring in the end in mind. And of course, a lot of this might seem obvious. Separate the must-haves from the nice-to-haves, but this is less commonly done than one would think for that matter. This is the process that really helps you line your playing field. In a pickup game, you can be fine with no center line, no corner flags, but you literally need a net to score. So what are the nets? Again, lots of job descriptions call for multiple years experience or senior level experience in a major institution. Maybe it's a CFRE, maybe it's a degree from an established institution. Maybe it's, on the competency side, something along the lines of collaboration, leadership, a values alignment, of course. But for every one of these things, I want to suggest that you really should be thinking about, is this a must-have or a nice-to-have? Because when you're looking at CVs and meeting with your candidates, you might be swayed by something that's not actually a must-have, but a nice-to-have. So if you're looking for an exceptional data person, for instance, critical and analytical skills, attention to detail, ability to translate technical information to the end user, these things are critical. But if they don't have those things, but if they have an amazing ability to write a great letter, the application equivalent of a step over, then you're really not helping anyone. And there's equity considerations here too that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Additionally, calibrate expectations on your compensation, your timeline, your candidate quality. Put simply, make sure you can afford the players you want to attract. International soccer leagues like the NASL, and I might be dating myself a little bit here, in the 70s and 80s, or Saudi Arabia now, for instance, have lots of money. So they can attract, and England too, they can attract extravagantly talented and expensive players. But the Hamilton Forge in the Canadian Soccer League may want Ronaldo and feel they deserve him, but it's not realistic. So if your budget says mid-table club, but your expectations are Champions League, you have a disconnect and you have a problem there. Or if you're in a rush or your organization isn't particularly well known, then unfortunately, you're likely not going to attract people as easily as larger, better paying organizations. And I'm going to address some tips to overcome this in a second. But you need to come to the market realistically with realistic expectations. And this isn't settling, this isn't compromising. I could do a whole other talk about that sort of piece, growing people from within, for instance, or recruiting exclusively for competencies and building skills. And maybe I will for that matter, but that's for another time. Though at the risk of contradicting myself, I will talk about money a little later too. Money isn't everything, but in the recruiting game, but it's something to think about for that matter too. And when you're designing your role, design the role for impact. One player cannot play every single position on the field. If you want a great right back, then focus on a great right back, obviously, and focus on the impact they can make in that particular position. That's where they can have the most impact. Remember as well, in a sport like soccer, a team can only go as far as its worst player. 11 players, less impact per player. Ronaldo has never won a World Cup. Messi has only won one. But in basketball, a team only goes as far as their best player. So LeBron, Michael Jordan, they've won multiple NBA championships for a reason. So are you wanting to raise your ceiling in that respect or your floor? EDs and senior leaders in many ways are best positioned for organization-wide fixes and impact. So we need to be pragmatic even with those kind of hires. The size of teams, the complexity, the structure, there's lots of things in play here. As well, identifying the internal barriers that could set the hire up to fail or prove some challenges. Remember, I talked before a little bit about getting to know the people that are this person's collaborators or the decision makers. A part of that process as well is thinking about the challenges that this person would have. Instinctually, you probably know what a lot of them are for that matter. It could be that the data isn't as clean as it could be for a new annual giving person coming in, or the board knows that the incoming chair may not be as capable and effective as the outgoing chair. Or perhaps the pipeline isn't as strong, but don't worry, a good major gifts person can fix everything. Deal with those things now. Expecting somebody to come in like that and expecting two world-class teams to play on a field of mud and dirt and expect this beautiful, wonderful, glorious game. The conditions for success matter a lot. Be clear in what will make this role attractive. Fundamentally, in some ways, it's a little bit of a branding exercise. And this is really where we get to the heart of things. And this is going to be a theme throughout the course of the conversation here, really getting candidates in the door that you want to attract fundamentally. So it's a little bit of a branding exercise. What will make someone excited to put on your proverbial uniform? There's a few ways to approach this, and I'll talk about one now. So, what is really the attractive factor in your organization or factors? What separates you from others? Don't say your mission because everybody says their mission. But what I mean by that is literally don't say our mission, because if I asked a lot of you what your mission is, you may not be able to say what it is, or you may have to double check on your website, or maybe you have a sense of it, but you can't define it really clearly. You may say culture, but that's also really hard to assess from the outside for that matter. So, whatever you come up with, think of a way to say it so it's not generic and it separates you from the others. Is it team spirit? Is it better benefits than others, for instance? Maybe you've completely revamped a particular policy, be it work from home, remote work, things like that, and blast that over the PA system in your stadium in multiple languages so people know it. Every little advantage helps. And again, I'll talk more about how exactly you do that in a minute. For example, did you know that the CMHA BC, Canadian Mental Health Association BC, offers unlimited mental health benefits for staff? Did you know that SFU has an entirely employer paid pension plan? Did you know that VGH UBC Hospital Foundation, I think there might be a few people from the foundation here, has a 10-day per year remote working program under particular conditions? So these things might be small. They might be examples that I've pulled out from different sort of scenarios, but they matter a lot because it demonstrates potential employees that you're thinking about them at this level and that you give them these kinds of things some thought. I'm going to pause for questions in a second, but just my final point in this area is deciding how you will evaluate candidates before you meet them. And again, just like the first point, we're really setting the stage for success. We're focusing on outcomes here. So once you've decided what you need, you don't need to wait until later to work on how you might assess it. So if you want team leadership experience and some competencies in leadership, does that mean people that have grown less experienced teams to be successful or help to manage change or maybe stabilized a group that has seen too many new leaders? Figuring out what you're looking for and the best way to assess that now, some preliminary questions, some thoughts about what you might be looking for, how you're going to grade CVs and evaluate them in an objective way is really important at this piece because otherwise you're bringing biases to the table when you actually start and you don't have these things in mind. So also a key piece, putting your role in public. You've made it through step one, you've documented all your pieces, you've made it through the elimination rounds, and things get a little bit tougher. Your underdog Ghana against Germany, your Curacao against Brazil. So good luck. You've made it through what you need. You know who's going to be involved. And how do you capture all this in a way that's compelling and people will agree to it? So remember how I talked about posting the mission? Well, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here in how you talk about the mission, but mission matters a lot, and you want to make the organization attractive and get people excited about it and see themselves in the role in a competitive marketplace. So mission and impact matter a lot. Remember how I said earlier that social profits are changing the world? I sincerely do believe that. And if you're here today, I know you believe it too. So let's talk about that fundamentally. It's still shocking to me how many postings might start off with the ABC Housing Society is looking for a new fundraising leader to guide our fundraising team and help reach incredible, important fundraising goals to achieve our mission, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of saying right up front, ABC Housing Society is making housing affordable and in reach for the millions of unhoused people in need in Canada. Which is the job you'd rather apply for? The one that puts the mission first or the one that talks about what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis? And yes, people in this sector want to be paid fairly. Absolutely. They want to understand the work, the value, and the people they work with. But if they don't feel compelled by the cause, they'll not stick around. And none of these things will really matter when it gets down to it. True, there are some mercenaries out there, no disrespect, people that have so many passions and interests that can fundraise for different things at different times in different ways. But for a lot of people, and to be really attractive, your mission is what's going to draw people fundamentally. Secondly, write for the candidate, not internal HR requirements. And okay, HR people, I know there's a few out there. You know, I love you. You're the trainers of the game. You appear on the field and you address mystery ailments with your magic sprays and water bottles. I have all the time in the world for HR people, but organizations need formal job descriptions. No question. It's an HR requirement. It's best practice, but it's also the rule book. And people aren't buying tickets for a World Cup game to read FIFA's exhaustive and probably really boring rule book. So by nature, job descriptions are exactly that, a description, but not a marketing piece necessarily that compels people and gets them to understand what's great about working at your organization. Universities, and I'm going to pick on university people in a second here for, if I may. Universities, I find are particularly bad at this, where institutional standards are caught up in grading demands that have criteria like impacts of error and consequences of judgment and ability to sit still for 8 hours. Like those are given too much thought and they're not really compelling for a posting. They don't need to be in the posting fundamentally. They need to be in the job description. Candidates need to see them, but they're not going to be attractive for candidates ultimately. So take some time, tweak your posting, focus on mission, use lively adjectives, use lively adverbs, speak glowingly about your organization, make explicit some of the things we've talked about before and the impact you've had and what differentiates you from other organizations. Show your posting to someone else that's not at all affiliated with the job, or maybe somebody that's attending here today for that matter, that's a trusted colleague in a different organization from arm's length. Would they apply? What tweaks do they have? Gather some intel fundamentally. Or if you're an AI user, if you're keen on Claude or ChatGPT, try use it to dress up the wording. Of course, it's going to be very transparent. If you go too far down that road, it can be a useful tool in some respects, but be very mindful of how and when you incorporate it for sure. And if you're ready for a little bit of a rant here, try to abolish the word fit. You're looking for mission alignment and passion. This is a bit of an outlier in this section in some ways, but remember, you're not hiring your best friend. You're looking for mission alignment. You're looking for passion. You're looking for competencies. You're looking for skills. And you're looking for, this is where you can put diversity to work as well, for that matter. You don't want to hire the same old people you already have. You don't want to hire people that fit with us. You want to think about the culture you want to create. You want to think about your ideal state. And if you're hiring for a fit, you're not potentially hiring for competencies needed for the job, the values of the organization. You're hiring best on who the people in the room like the most. So fit is a bit of an F word for me. So equity in process as well. I've mentioned this a few times already. I'm going to keep coming back to it. Equity, fairness, objectivity, these things really matter. Remember the platinum rule, do unto others as they would have done to them. Accommodations to support people through the process. They're fair, they're reasonable, they broaden your candidate pool potentially as well, and provided you're giving people the same opportunity to excel and thrive. For your postings and your job expectations, this could mean things like eliminating the call for a car and a driver's license. Is that really important, or is it the ability to get to meetings that you really want to promote as a principal? So focus on things like that. Use plain human language, avoid jargon, long lists, keep it concise, yet detailed. You don't want to lose people that are indifferent to research, but you want to make it very clear. And I'm very guilty of this, as probably you're getting a sense right now. You give me a microphone, give me the venue, I will ramble. I'm overly wordy. So it's something I'm working on and something I think generally the sector could work on as well. And to diversify, think really critically about your own practices, your own policies. What are you putting out into the world? Diversity means different things to different groups. And it's laughable, and I can't help but laugh when it happens, but clients will often say to me, we would like more men in our shop. Well, that's not really helping broader power imbalances, is it? So let's really think critically about how we're approaching diversity fundamentally. I know all of you in the sector are committed to this. I know I'm preaching to the choir, as it were, but don't make others do the work of diversifying your organization for you. Look inwardly, look at your practices, your people, your teams. If you're not doing well with it, own it. Candidates from diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences do not want to be tokenized. They do not want to have to bear the burden of diversifying for you and doing that working. It's enough work as it is fundamentally. You're on a journey. You're working to fix it. Your land acknowledgement, your policies, inclusive language, there's work to be done and really should own that. And remember that diversity isn't just about visibility, it's about power dynamics. Like case in point right now, here I am, the cisgendered middle-aged white guy lecturing everybody like I'm some sort of authority in the work fundamentally. So let's talk about how this plays out in different worlds. Politics and power really is lived experience. So be transparent as well about your priorities, challenges, and expectations. Remember what I said earlier about the pain points and potential areas of setting people up for failure? Well, you don't need to list them in your postings, obviously. I'm not suggesting that. But as you advance in your conversations with candidates, you need to give them a sense of what they're getting into. Some people will be excited by the challenge and some will opt out. But either way, you're in a better spot because people know what they're getting into. You don't expect perfection from them, and they don't expect it from you either. And how this might manifest in the posting, for instance, is talking about where you are situated as an organization. Are you trying to grow? Are you trying to build? Are there particular things you're expanding? Are you pivoting to a new direction? Do you have a new strategic plan? Don't position these again as pain points, but think about them as challenges so that you're being transparent with what it is that these candidates might be getting into. And of course, there's laws around this right now, which I love. All discovery group searches from day one have included the salary range. Transparency matters a lot. It takes away the sort of gamespersonship and posturing around salaries. The strategy on focusing on what makes you unique again is an important piece here, but don't overstate it necessarily. Like I know, for instance, many organizations have great work from home policies, the new normal being 2 to 3 days a week in the office, for instance. A lot of organizations have that. So don't overstate what's special about you or unique about you, but do be pragmatic about these things fundamentally. Um, and because salaries are transparent and widely posted, that also gives you an advantage as a hiring manager, frankly, to assess data on what other organizations are paying similar kind of roles. And don't forget as well, there's legislation in various provinces that require disclosure for salaries. BC, Alberta, Ontario. If you do a simple Google search for any of these provinces, sunshine lists, they're called different things and they have different thresholds and different reasons. But you can literally look up the Associate Vice President fundraising at the U of T. You can look up fiscal year salaries and what these people are being paid, and then understand the context and benefits that they're receiving for that matter. And finally, ending with a compelling reason. Fundraisers are great at this, so incorporate this into your postings as well. Fundraisers know all about the call to action, and the sector's urgency has never been greater. So use those skills in your posting fundamentally. Again, is there an exciting campaign coming up? Is this a new opportunity for someone to build a team? Urgency and excitement are going to compel people to look at you as something that's a group or an organization that's a really compelling piece for the next stage in their career. So, Kirsten, I'm going to pause again for a second, take a glass of water. Any questions?
Yeah, we've got one here that says when it comes to
Any
training,
easy questions, I should say. I forgot to mention that. That's an important part. No.
when it comes to training and education requirements, are you
Yeah.
seeing trends towards less formal education requirements and more practical experience?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. I'm seeing the trend, particularly in posting, and I think it's really important for the sake of equity and diversity to not get tied down to a very specific criteria, be it a credential, be it an education. I in the past I saw ED roles that required a master's degree or an MBA, and that was literally a requirement. Now wording should be and ought to be much more general around a degree is a strong asset or an equivalent experience, training, volunteering, and so on. Lived experience, everybody has different experience, lived experience, economic background, social opportunity. Everybody comes at post-secondary, everybody comes to training opportunities, certifications very, very differently. And I've seen lots of great fundraisers with MBAs. I've seen lots of terrible fundraisers with MBAs. Same thing with CFRE, same thing with degree. Focusing on competencies, skills, background, ability is much more compelling than it is for a credential. Even in the university space, to be totally honest, I mean, I have this conversation with university clients a lot that, oh, because we're a university, for a fundraiser to have credibility, they're going to need to have a degree. That may be the case, but very rarely do people actually look up to see if someone does have a CV, how they present themselves. Are they articulate? Can they speak really well about the work that they're doing? Can they engage people very lively? Those skills are often more important and will mask any sort of deficiencies or opportunities for education or needs for education for that matter. Great question. Um, so I want to pivot to sourcing here. How exactly are we bringing in candidates for that matter? So let's do a quick poll question here for a second. I want to hear about how you're getting candidates right now. So when you post your roles, are you getting too few candidates? Are you getting lots but not good ones? Is everything hunky dory? Probably not the case if you're here today for that matter, but is it all over the map? I'm just sort of curious what context people are coming from when it gets down to it. Maybe I should have asked this poll question first, but I'm just sort of curious. Okay, people are, it looks like lots of candidates, but few good ones. Okay, so your problem is one of quality as opposed to quantity for that matter. Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. That's super helpful. So for this piece, we're in the quarterfinals. So let's talk a little bit about sourcing. How do you target those people? How do you bring in those candidates that are going to align with what it is that you're looking for fundamentally? So here again, we need to be intentional, being realistic, being strategic in bringing in those people. So first, there's a couple themes here I want to talk first about using your network deliberately and with intention fundamentally, your circles of influence. And recruiting is like fundraising in many ways, fundamentally. It's relational, and sometimes asking for help is going to get you in the door for the real thing you want. I don't know if it's still the case that if you ask for money, you get advice, you get ask for advice, you get money. It's been a few years since I've done fundraising, but that's a little bit of a cliche that emerges as well. But fundamentally, in fundraising, you want to build in recruiting, sorry, you want to build up relationships and ask for help, ask for advice. So think about those circles of influence that you already have in the connections of people that are already passionate about your organization in particular. So do you have alumni networks? Let's start there, for instance. If you're a university or college, you can literally have alumni networks, and sometimes those alumni networks will literally track people's occupations. If you have a database that you can access through alumni, keyword searches for development, advancement, are there alumni that are working in the profession that you're already in or that you want to recruit for fundamentally? Do you have ex-staff you like that you want to stay in touch with or that you've stayed in touch with? Are there ex-staff that had a positive experience that you can reach out to and engage because they do know you? And if they had a positive experience, they might be helpful. Is your LinkedIn profile accurate and active? Who is looking at your LinkedIn profile? If you have a premium subscription, premium membership, you can actually check to see who is checking you out. That's a reverse engineer sort of sourcing exercise. You can see who's looking at you, who's looking at your leaders. So engaging in that level of activity is really helpful. What about peers in other organizations? People in this room are clients. Are you an organization that has clients for that matter? Are there ex or current clients? So do a little bit of a relational mapping exercise and think about those people that already have direct connections or indirect connections to your organization. Are there opportunities to engage those people in some capacity? And frankly, asking for help. In the world of outreach, in the world of sourcing, we've talked a little bit about the posting, but the theme here is a little bit more active in that respect. It pivots to the next point around recruiting staff. Again, former staff that had a good experience may know the up and coming fundraisers. Board members are quite often donors to other organizations. Have you asked them if they've had a positive experience giving to another organization? Or have they had a negative experience and you know not to approach those people, for instance? But sometimes board members will have a positive fundraising or experience working with another organization for that matter. Can they post it with a testimonial? Can a board member post it with a testimonial? Can current staff post it with a testimonial with a simple join me, it's great to work here message? Thinking about those circles of influence, thinking about those first person testimonials goes a long way. And asking for help makes a difference. These are fundamentally your assists, of course, right? You need to pass the ball around to get it on goal. So working these networks, working these opportunities involves others, takes some legwork, but it's often quite rewarding. And as mentioned, talked about equity, right? Before we talked about equity, we talked about diversity. Lots of clients, lots of people I talk to want a diverse candidate slate, want particular people in a broader sort of scope for that matter, right? And they want to expand their networks in some capacity. So post and look at new places. Did you know there are Aboriginal job boards? That there's a Black Fundraisers Canadian Collective, that there's an Asian one in the works as well, that our friends at CNIB, for instance, will share postings with their networks of job seekers, that the Immigrant Services Society has a Hire a Newcomer program. So think critically again about organizations that somehow might connect, partner organizations, client organizations. Are you part of an umbrella organization, for instance, co-funding with other organizations? Do you work with Vantage Point? Do you work with Imagine Canada? What are some resources that you can tap into to broaden your network and broaden your scope to get the word out there for your searches? And it always comes up, of course, I don't have the capacity to bring in somebody at a lesser level, a newcomer, somebody that doesn't know the Canadian local marketplace for that matter. Well, take the long-term view if you can. What opportunities do you have to build from within or position people for success in that respect fundamentally? And be open to questions. Based on everybody's response, you're getting lots of applications and few quality ones. I want to challenge you a little bit that 15 minutes invested in a phone call or an email exchange can really be the difference between somebody who's applying and somebody who's thinking about applying, not quite sure, and sees no questions, please. Only those people shortlisted are going to apply. to actually throwing their hat into the ring. It's easy for me to say, this is what I do all day, every day. But if you want to talk about how welcoming, engaging, active your culture is, but then you put into the world this big stop sign saying no questions, we don't want to talk to possible candidates, you're really contradicting yourself in some ways. So if people are mulling an opportunity and not quite sure if they want to apply, a little bit of time invested in a conversation is well worth it. And if you don't have HR resources to do this, I know it's a big ask, particularly if a lot of people are getting questions, but I'm actually going to challenge you there too, because I put it in all of my postings that we're open to questions. In fact, we encourage them. And we actually don't get that many people. It depends on the role, it depends on the organization. It's worth testing, I think. And I'm curious to know if many of you are doing it for that matter too. So, but again, if you don't have the HR resources to do this, I know it's time consuming. Is there somebody who wants to build some internal skill sets around dealing with external communities? Maybe somebody who's a keen fundraiser that doesn't speak to donors yet. Can they be the first point of contact with people reaching out, even if they're just funneling responses to the right person? It's a way of building some internal skills fundamentally. Map the market. Here again, I'm asking you to do a little bit of legwork and think about where the people are you want to reach out to. What are the other organizations? And I alluded to this in the word context. Are there other organizations in your scope and field? Who are the ones you want to emulate? Are there people doing this work particularly well? And how do you reach them? And remember that most people, most organizations for that matter, want their fundraising staff to be accessible to donors. So that means they're often fairly straightforward to reach, or people, of course, self-disclose their career paths on LinkedIn. So there's contact information that's available through LinkedIn in different channels for that matter, too. So these points together mean ideally you're expanding your market intentionally for a more qualified and diverse candidate slate. And when you are reaching out to people on an individual targeted basis, make sure you're focusing on quality and personalized approaches. If you're asking someone to think about a particular opportunity, be really specific about why you think this might align with them based on what you know about them. Don't make too many assumptions necessarily, but just make it exploratory and reach out to people as opposed to blanket approaches or a blanket LinkedIn message for that matter. And of course, when you do have candidates that come forward, you want to move relatively quickly. Top candidates are having multiple conversations. They're not sitting on the bench biding their time. They're having multiple tryouts in the hope of getting subbed on somewhere. Fundraisers are generally relatively well networked as well. So if somebody is openly looking, chances are they're having other conversations too. So don't rush, but you need to be able to move relatively quickly, of course. Remember how I spoke at the beginning about knowing who your key players are? Here again, if you've had that opportunity to figure out who the key players are and who's going to be involved, ideally you can set the stage at the end, book interviews well ahead of time, so that way people aren't scrambling at the last minute to make interviews. But I'll talk about interviews a bit more in a second. And then track and refine what messaging actually works for that matter. It takes some work, but it's well worth doing. I know annual giving people are all about the A/B testing and multiple messages and things like that. If you can do that in a recruiting basis as well, it'll really help you understand what is attractive to candidates. Or just ask them, where did they see the posting? What caused them to apply? Did somebody refer them? How did this actually play out? So that is helpful information, and this iterative process helps you understand what in your messaging and breadth and scope is working fundamentally. So before we move to managing these applications and receiving applications, I'm going to pause again for a second. Kirsten, any
Yeah,
questions?
we have a couple of questions, but I guess the general theme is when it comes to sourcing, if you're limited by geography and finding the right candidate, or they don't live in the region, or maybe it's a temporary position, how can you make it appealing or good to candidates?
Okay, so if you've got some built-in constraints like geography or a contract, as the case may be. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point and a great question. I mean, you're built in, there's some built-in challenges there inevitably. For geographically specific roles, like perhaps it's a smaller community, or perhaps it's an organization that serves a very specific community. Like there, you may want to take a broader view in terms of candidate engagement and think about your training programs and growing from within. I don't know how big the staff is necessarily, but there might be some opportunities there. And temporary roles, like whether it is related to a campaign or an interim role or a mat leave, for instance. I mean, there I might challenge you to think about people that might be a little bit adjacent to what it is that you're looking for, because people looking at short-term roles, temporary roles, interim roles, acting roles, or project-specific roles are often thinking about these in terms of testing the waters or slightly going in a different direction. So let's say it is somebody that's in a leadership giving or annual giving space. and they want to do more donor engagement, they want to do more major gifts, for instance, and the temporary role is a major gifts role, there might be a good competency basis for those kinds of people. And inevitably, it might involve rolling the dice on taking some chances on people, which is harder to do in a temporary role or a contract role for that matter. So there's a few different ways of approaching it. But again, being upfront with some of the challenges and why this opportunity is available is often a good one as well. If it's a mat leave or a 1 year contract, a 1 year posting, whatever that might be, probably going to take a bit more sourcing, a bit more outreach, particularly for people that are in situations where they're full time. You might not get, or are currently in a role, you might not get a lot of applications in that respect. There again, I would put your mission forward for someone that might be compelled by your mission, or perhaps they've applied before. So a few different ways. It's a challenge, no doubt. I don't have a direct answer for you. It's not a simple question by any means, of course, but lots to think about there for sure. All right, I've got a few other areas I want to cover here. So I want to get into receiving applications. And those of you that get lots of applications, I know this can be a little bit of work, but saying thanks matters a lot for that matter. So hopefully things are working out. You're getting applications, board members or staff and sharing it. So how do you manage the flow of candidates fundamentally? So acknowledge every application as a principle, even if they're not right for this. They might be a donor, they might be a monthly donor, they might be a future board member, past client, current client. There's opportunities and your networks and the expansion of organizations go in a lot of different directions. So there might be different opportunities to engage them in different ways. And by the same token, tracking applicants for future reference. Let's say it's a short-term role that someone's hiring for. If somebody applied for a job a few years ago, they weren't quite right for it then. What have they been doing in the meantime? Maybe they're right for something now. They've already expressed an interest in your organization. It might be worth following up for them for that matter. So HR people will often have really great tracking systems. It's more challenging in smaller organizations where you might not have that resource necessarily, but thinking about the future opportunities and how you treat candidates now is really important. And you're definitely going to pick up on a theme here. The candidate experience is really important for me because only one person is going to get the job, ideally. But all these people that don't get the job, they really want to have a positive experience with you because you never know what the future is going to hold. As Stephen Wright says, it's a small town, but I wouldn't want to paint it. So there's lots of opportunities where you're going to run across people in different walks of life, different contexts. So having a positive experience matters a lot for that matter. And when you're looking at CVs, remember how I talked before about evidence or about building your criteria and understanding what it is that you're looking for. So looking at obviously for, or maybe it's not obvious perhaps, but looking for impact and examples, not just responsibilities. It's easy in human nature to be impressed by titles, by credentials that we talked a little bit before, graduate degrees, descriptions of work. But just like you're looking for impact in the work, look for impact of growth, look for impact and examples of in people's CVs of what it is that you're looking for. And if you're using AI screening tools for that matter, well, you have my sympathy because I haven't quite figured out a way of doing it successfully. I'm proud to say I read every CV. Many of you, I'm sure, do as well for that matter. So lots of work to be done in that respect. And I think if a submission is too vague, that happens a lot, unfortunately, right? This makes this piece really fundamentally challenging. It can be very frustrating. And here you might be, frankly, needing to reach out to people or making some inferences about what their success has been from an initial screening call for people that you're curious about. And frankly, what I like to do as well, and I think we all need to, as a sector, get in the habit of, is giving people feedback on their CVs. I think we do people a disservice, and we raise the sights of the sector at large if we're sharing with people that their CV was too imprecise. You couldn't make inferences based on what they actually did. They need to put more examples, percentage growth, whatever that might look like. Let's collectively try to raise the communal level of CVs here fundamentally. And if you've really been good at taking notes, that's another theme you're going to pick up on here. Good record keeping. Let's say somebody did reach out for questions. If you took good notes from that conversation, when you actually get your CV, you can cross-reference what you talked about with what's on the CV to really infer how they might align with the role fundamentally. So we're looking for patterns of growth. We're not looking for perfect linear progressions. Careers are no longer direct ladders. Coordinator, development officer, associate director, director. These things are rarely the case when we're looking at career paths. Linear trajectories are very rare, and titles are often not equivalent in organizations. Very famously, there's a hospital foundation here in Vancouver that for the longest time had coordinators that were responsible for raising $1 million plus goal. And that might be an executive director or a director of development in another organization. So we're looking for patterns of growth. We're looking for impact. COVID has messed up people's career paths. Geographic movement, family considerations, organizational contraction, organizational expansion can really throw off the linearity of people's paths. So what we're looking for is growth, focusing on impact and not rushing to judgment fundamentally. I had a very wise professor once tell me that confusion is perfectly fine and perfectly normal because out of confusion stems knowledge. If a CV is confusing, that's not a good sign, obviously. But the principle here is fundamentally giving the exploration the opportunity to explore and understand and seek out knowledge as opposed to making assumptions or sweeping generalizations fundamentally. And of course, when you're looking at candidates, CVs, being consistent with your criteria, being aware and mindful of bias here fundamentally, be very mindful of these biases. If you ever find yourself saying, this person has worked at this particular organization and I know they're not very good, or this person reminds me of X or Y person, and that can go either way. That could be a positive comparison or a negative comparison. Either way, the comparison isn't really fair fundamentally, or this person's career track doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't need to make sense to you. It needs to make sense to them. So there again, understand what it is that you're looking for and why. And again, if you've established your criteria at the beginning, you're in a much stronger shape at this stage fundamentally. So avoid eliminating strong candidates for minor gaps, short tenures. Again, it's an opportunity to put aside assumptions, looking past titles. Short tenures can hit everyone at some point for all kinds of reasons. It's happened to me. It's happened to many of you, I'm sure, for that matter. So you've probably heard my rant at some point, if you've worked with me before, that people with short stints aren't by definition should be ruled out. Don't make inferences about what happened in those conditions fundamentally. And if you've taken good notes, again, earlier on in the process, ideally you're in a good state when we get to this stage. And then you want to shortlist based on potential and experience. And I use the word potential here quite deliberately because an organization often looks for people that might have already done a particular thing that your organization might like to do. But knowing that you haven't already raised $10 million in major gifts, is it reasonable to expect somebody to come from another organization where they are doing that or exceeding it for that matter? So how does that look like? What's the translation there? So we're looking for potential, we're looking for experiences, competencies, impact. Again, don't rush to judgment. Ask questions as opposed to judging fundamentally. And personally, I'm not a big fan of what video review has done to soccer, but what I do like is that it allows for timely and accurate second looks to interrogate an issue from all angles. So you should bring that principle to CV reviews as well. And finally, review and revisit your promising maybes before you're finalizing your list or finalizing the candidates that you're speaking to. It's always a pleasant surprise when people are open to slightly outlier candidates for that matter, or the person that might be on periphery of what you think you're looking for. Being open-minded and the capacity to be surprised in an arena where we often rush to judgment can be a door opener for people that align actually for what it is that you're looking for, but may not have that on first impression. So it's often worth, again, a few minutes of your time to investigate a person or two more deeply than you would have otherwise thought. We're at the final, where we're heading towards the final for that matter. We're in the third place match. We're trying to select our candidates. The end is in sight. We're doing well. We have an attractive list of candidates, ideally. Or even if we're not excited about them fully, to be honest, we're coming in open-minded and we're looking at possibilities, knowing we've tried our best to bring in a good slate of people. How do we align them to understand what it is that we're looking for fundamentally? So again, we spoke about this early. I'm coming back to it, making sure the right people are in the right room, are in the room for the right reasons fundamentally. Identifying the people you need to have in the room to help your selection process and why they're there, and making sure they're excited, frankly. If they're not excited or the time it takes to interview, remember that we are still literally selling the role to candidates fundamentally. The candidates we've talked about have other options, they have other opportunities. They want to know that this is a collaborative, interesting group. And I've seen this happen in different ways for that matter. You need to be sure that you're doing this right. If, for instance, and I've seen this happen at a university panel, if one of your panelists says, I like to think with my eyes closed and my head tipped back, it doesn't mean I'm asleep. It means I'm actually listening attentively. Let candidates know that that's happening, frankly. Otherwise, it sends a terrible impression, to be totally honest. And a diverse panel will give you diverse views. Again, you want to put out quite deliberately, you want to demonstrate to candidates that you take diversity very seriously. It's a best practice and it's a key message and it's a process, right? So having diverse views at the table goes beyond diverse titles and levels at the organization. It means embedding lively discussion into your process where everyone gets a say, people feel comfortable challenging each other's views, perspectives, and biases that I talked about before. And candidates will note that there's diversity in your panel and they will value seeing that because that's you living your values or at least trying to do so. So here again, the diversity, the equity lens. You want to have a good meeting space where people can hear each other, good sound, where there isn't a gym next door or a treadmill really distracting people fundamentally. Sometimes people will want to send the questions in advance, perfectly reasonable. Interviews don't need to be memory tests, or maybe you send a few in advance for that matter. If it's an online interview, paste the questions into the chat. If you're particularly wordy like me again, giving people the sense and the opportunity to read questions while they're being read to them is super helpful and also inclusive of different learning styles and different opportunities in that respect too. In person, that means printing out the questions, putting them in front of the candidate as they're being read aloud. They can follow along too. So there's all sorts of tools and trips to make interviews successful and welcoming in this respect. I won't get into all of them necessarily here, but I do want to reinforce as well that we shouldn't be improvising in interviews. We want to structure them. We want to have similar conversations with them so they're on similar questions or similar ground, I should say. So the identical questions matter. Of course, some follow-up is certainly welcome as the case may be. And never ask a novelty, unaccessible question, please. It may be interesting and fun to understand which three people, alive or dead, the candidate would want to have dinner with and why, or if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? Those are literally questions that people have spontaneously asked in interviews from board members more often than not, unfortunately. So let's get rid of those. You can't assess the answer. They're not helpful. They don't tie back to competencies. And frankly, they're unprofessional and they send a negative message to candidates. So if you have a board member that wants to go off script or is going that direction, or a staff member, for instance, don't let them. Likewise, manage the interview really well. Don't do four in a row. Interviewing is tiring. Don't rush your candidates. They are interviewing you as well. So give lots of time to ask really meaningful, excellent questions. Don't rush them out the door. Um, some candidates and some panelists have asked me, oh, should we have a secret signal if the interview isn't going well? That way we can wrap up early. Well, time and time again, I've actually seen candidates struggle at the beginning, maybe overcome some initial nervousness, and they really pick up steam and they really do well. And those are the people that sometimes get hired. The reverse is also true for that matter. Sometimes people do really well at the beginning. You're not going to hire someone 10 minutes into an interview if they're doing well. So give people the benefit of the doubt and really let the interview breathe. So those candidates that are doing well at the beginning may not do so well at the end with other questions for that matter. That's why we're being consistent and equitable in process fundamentally. And of course, we're comparing candidates against a criteria, not against each other, particularly early on. Inevitably, you do need to compare candidates, but I suggest you do this at the end when you've completed your rounds of interviews for that matter. It's naturally human nature as you go through the interview process to compare each to each other and develop an ongoing list, of course, right? But saving those comparisons until the end really help you compare the candidate to your ideal. What have you mapped out at the beginning as the key criteria you're looking for? If you do it that way, you might end up with several candidates at the end that are actually viable for the job, as opposed to one candidate that is the only person you might look at because that person may not accept the offer. They may not want to join you. They may not like the fact that one of your panelists looked like he was falling asleep in an interview. So lots of things can come up at this stage. So making sure that you're being very thoughtful about this piece fundamentally. And of course, asking good questions. Here again, tailor your questions to the role. Look for specific examples, not hypotheticals. Rarely do I like to start questions with, what would you do if, or, here's a particular situation, how would you handle it? Past examples, behavioral-based questions, past examples of behavior are the best predictors of future behavior as well. So focusing on those pieces and giving a few questions ahead of time. Again, perfectly reasonable, allows people to prepare, takes away some of that initial nervousness. If they can warm up with an initial question, that is really helpful and one they can knock out of the park. Tell candidates as well ahead of time. Help candidates prepare that you're going to be looking for examples. That way they have the benefit of best preparation and it's not a memory test fundamentally. Of course, more demanding roles, higher level roles, perhaps executive director roles, where you have to manage a difficult conversation in the moment. You might have a spontaneous, strange question from a board member in a board meeting, for instance, where some thinking on people's feet is perfectly reasonable and appropriate, but also be mindful of different learning styles and different thinking styles. Extroverts, of course, thrive in those sort of environments, and not your best leader isn't always going to be an extrovert for that matter, right? There's a ton of really effective, wonderful introverts. Let's not lose sight of them. So making sure we're being very decisive or we're being very thoughtful in how we approach the debrief and bias conversations as well. That's where a diverse panel certainly comes in as well. So again, at the interview stage, you're going to want to move decisively. Delays lose top talent. That doesn't mean you necessarily need to decide right then and there, but at least stay in touch with your candidates. Again, the candidate experience matters. Even if you're not able to decide quickly, let them know that. Well done today. We'll be back in touch soon. Stay in touch with them, check in with them. How did they think it went? Do they have follow-up questions? Anything else they want to share? Being in touch with candidates takes out some of that unnerving suspense that candidates always get. Very few candidates walk out of an interview thinking, oh, I nailed that. I did really, really well. More often than not, we're always our own worst critics, I think. It's kind of the nature of the beast. And that's how people, approach interviews quite often for that matter. So you want them feeling good about the process and what they've achieved. So before we move to the last section here, I just want to pause for a second for questions.
So we have one that's kind of looking at it from a different lens. If
Okay.
someone's in an executive director role, how
Yeah.
could they prepare for a future departure and how could they help the board with that process?
Oh, yeah. Prepare for a future departure. That's a great question. So thinking about succession planning and what that looks like. Exactly. I like that question a lot. So there's one thing. So remind board members, for starters, that you're not going to be there forever. It's not a defeatist question by any means or defeatist conversation. Everybody does leave their job eventually anyway. So making sure from a very procedural sort of perspective and governance perspective, make sure they have things in place like governance rules around a task force or a search committee. Do they have a policy for acting roles and acting ED, acting pay, for instance, if you do leave suddenly? Are they going to be prepared for that? Make sure your own job description is really in place and really solid and that you've reflected on what the needs of the role will be. Ultimately, the board does make the decision about an ED hire, but you want to give them the tools to be prepared. Thinking about your own succession planning as well. Are there some people within your organization, if you're a large organization, that might be well positioned for this? I mean, this is a multi-year exercise in some places. And succession planning doesn't ever mean a guarantee that this person will step into the role, but you can work with your board, your governance committee, your HR committee, whatever committee it is that you're working with fundamentally to help prepare them for those pieces fundamentally. So it is setting that groundwork. It depends as well on a really good, I think, transparent conversation with your chair, with the boards at large to understand that it's often best for an organization as well to have transitions. The organizations that have had leaders for 20, 25 years, they struggle a little bit with the transition. It's hard to follow that person because inevitably it's a new person coming in after an organization being synonymous with one person for a long time. So, an organization in a particular growth stage, it's actually good for a new person to come in with a new skill set, with a new background, new opportunities to take the organization in a new direction. I mean, my governance and planning colleagues could tell you all about this and to go into much more depth. But yeah, it's a great question. It's sort of a multi-stage process without scaring people fundamentally. Yeah, good question. So last section here, we're in the final. It's the offer. We're onboarding. We're trying to position this for success. That Jules Rimet Cup is in sight, so we're really trying to go for it here. So again, we've been transparent through the process. No surprises. Your candidates know what the salary range is. You've posted your benefits. If you're a great organization, you probably have a website that talks about your benefits, your pension plan. So people know what they're getting into. Ideally, you've had some good conversations and built rapport with your select candidate, and they know what they're getting into in regards to process, responsibilities, salary range. Don't skip references. I find they're becoming a little bit more of a tick box exercise in some ways. Speaking to three people that worked with this person in the past, or maybe it's an online form that people fill in with some token questions. They do still matter. And the view I take is really positioning this person for success. Or they're things you haven't heard about this person that may not be red or yellow flags, but you just want to get a better handle on, for instance. So if somebody's going to be partnering very closely with marketing communications, is there a marketing communications person that can talk about how they build that collaboration, how they work together with subject matter expertise in a different way? Don't necessarily take the references that you're given. Ask for specific people. Again, it's a small town. You may know some of the people that this person worked with, or others in your organization might, and asking for specific references of credible people can be really helpful in that respect. And here again, pace. Great candidates don't sit around. So once you have made that decision, really try to move relatively quickly. Again, if you've built good rapport, you can say, hey, I've got some good news. We should chat, or whatever the case may be fundamentally. I have a very quick poll, one last poll for that matter. I'm curious how people share news once they're making job offers. Like how does that actually play out? Because I'm a little concerned that sometimes people just do it just with some paperwork or a very unwarm conversation. So there's a final poll question here. I'm hoping to get some responses to it. So yeah, so follow up. People tend to do it in person. So yeah, so good candidate communications there. Good. But for the most part, more than half of you are booking meetings. You're telling the candidate, you're being transparent. That's really great, and that's fantastic. And I really want to encourage that because making it personal is so important. I never offer a job just with an email. You want to see how it lands. You don't want to celebrate the goal in the corner by yourself. You want to celebrate your team. We miss out on the experience and miss out on the moment if you're not actually engaging with the candidate in that respect. So pick up the phone, book a virtual call. I have good news. Can we chat? So a lot of you are doing that as well. And if there's some negotiations involved, it also gives you the opportunity to resell the role. Remind them, why did they apply? What's engaging? What is it that they're looking for? Particularly if they're negotiating a particular term, you want to remind them of what exactly the win-win has already been. What is it you're agreeing to? What are they excited about? It's a great way to engage your candidates. And of course, staying close with them throughout the decision as well. Don't leave the offer to them and then never be in touch. People want some processing time. Even the most excited candidates, give them at least a day, a couple days to sleep on the decision. You may need to keep your other candidates warm if this is the person you're looking for, and that's okay too. But you don't want someone super excited and then realizing after the fact, oh, I have this other important question, or I've thought about things and I really can't do it, or heaven forbid, this happens sometimes too. Personal circumstances can change on a dime. So staying really close through the decision is really important and anticipating concerns they may have. And remember, you've really started onboarding at day one. You've started onboarding already fundamentally. The entire candidate experience matters throughout this process. By staying close, by making it personal, by building rapport, you're creating rapport and warmth with the people coming on. So effectively, they're already getting a strong sense of who you are, how you work, what you value as a culture. And that matters a lot when people come on board fundamentally, right? I've seen too many organizations deal with the offer letter, deal with the negotiations. They've got the signed letter. Maybe a day or two before someone starts, they might send the tax forms or an orientation manual, and that's it. And that doesn't really feel good for someone taking a big career step, a big career move, leaving the organization to come somewhere else, come to work somewhere else, I should say. So it doesn't feel good walking in on day one if that's the process. So really nail day one, have everything ready, the tech, email addresses. Have you pre-booked some meetings? Is there somebody in the office to greet them? Might be shockingly obvious, but lots of organizations also don't do this particularly well. A handwritten note from the chair, a handwritten note from the CEO, whatever that might look like, first impressions really stick. You want this person coming in really excited. And then thinking beyond the hire, again, taking a really long-term view. The question that you had before about the ED departure is really an interesting one because I actually had an ED tell me that she started a new job she was really excited about. And day one, the chair said, "Okay, let's talk about your succession plan." So she was quite struck by that in a very scary sort of way because it's scary to think, oh, we're not actually thinking about you, we're thinking about your succession. So it really shocked her a little bit. But she really appreciated in hindsight that the chair was taking a long-term view, looking 5, 10, beyond that years out, trying to position this person's in success, but also in tandem thinking about the organization wide and what the future might hold, recognizing that the new ED brings something amazing, but they want the organization to ultimately thrive. So thinking about this person's own growth as they come into the role fundamentally. So talk growth early, talk development plans, talk leadership opportunities, talk training, have a stay interview before you need an exit interview. I love talking to people to learn why it is that they've stuck around the way they have, because the people that come on day one are different in year one, in year two, in year three. The organization's different. So understanding why people stick around also helps your recruiting. So you've hired a great team. The themes around impact that the person will have, getting aligned internally, considering your audience, reaching out, asking for help, moving quickly. You may not be able to implement all of these. A lot of these, it sounds like people are already implementing, but if you've taken a few tips and tricks away, that's great to hear. The World Cup only comes around every 4 years, but your team shows up every day. So build it like you mean to win.